Hi there, thank you so much for clicking the thumbnail and being interested in my work. In this video I share with you my techniques and tips on how I simplify quite complicated portraits. With all the hair, the tennis ball and the grass, I'll go through everything with you and give you a simple way on how to achieve the results. So let's dive in and take a look. Just starting off with a centre point, I'm just going to go quickly through this outline. It's freehand mainly, but I've tried an interesting way just to get some little points here and there, which I'll go through in a minute with you. But I've just got the big shapes in first, working from that centre point using imaginary angles. I've got loads of videos in my channel now to explain how I do the outline, so if you want to check those out, I'll leave a little sort of thumbnail on the screen for you so you can recognise it. Now I tried this different way of doing it to get a cross-reference by blowing up the reference image to the same scale, and then just mark the area, putting thumb and finger on the paintbrush, and then just put it up against the board because it's actually the same size as what you're measuring on the computer screen. I mean, obviously you can only do this if you've got a computer screen big enough, but yeah, it was quite a quick way of doing it rather than getting a ruler out with a cross reference. I only did the odd places here and there just to help me out, just to find where the area was, and then just freehand the rest of it. Now I also used the brush to check the vertical plane against where things lie with each other, and also a horizontal plane, so that's what I normally do when I do freehand, so using the brush in that way as well, and just basically mainly just freehanding it really, and just letting go and just feeling it. I mean, you couldn't really measure every little strand of fur there, it'd just drive you nuts. So what you do is just freehand it and just see the shapes and the movement. It's like you're doing hair on a portrait. You just get the flow of it and just sort of keep an open heart and just let go and just see the actual image as a whole. It's best to make sure that the image is small enough so you can see the whole of the image, which makes it easier then to see all these details. Now I've chose a colour. I've been lucky enough to actually find one that's the same shade as what I'm looking for, but the rest is what I normally use, and just mix as I go along by using brown and blue for the shadows, and burnt sienna, yellow ochre and blue together. Creates really subtleties. This stage here is the underdrawing. Now what I'm doing here now is just correcting the outline and just moving things around subtly and just getting some basic form in there. So basically putting the white down, then just glaze over with those subtle colours and then mix as I go along. But I'm not really concerned about getting the value right and the colour right at this stage. All it is about getting the placement, so when I start putting the richer colours on, it's all fresh then. I ain't got to move it all around, it's all going on top of the preparation. So I'm using brown and blue for the dark areas and rather than black at this point. I always like to do the eyes at the same time as well, just to make sure that I've got the same sort of combination of colours I'm using. Now just flowing with it, just opening my heart, letting go of the mind, focusing on the energy of the subject, and it seems that the movements just happen. The more you can let go of thinking about it, and the more you can just be aware of the flow of it and the movement of all this fur, the more it seems to just flow. Now for the nose I'm using brown and blue. Use a different blue there, more of a sort of warmer blue. All the time measuring as I'm going along, just comparing, making sure the drawing's okay. Just keeping things nice and simple, just using brown and white just to draw this collar in, just for the underdrawing. Now when I did the ball, all I did is use white to get like a tonal value, more pressure where it's light and less where it's mid-tone, and then just glaze over with the green then, just to give an idea of colour there. If you're enjoying this video, why not subscribe? It's absolutely free, and then you're sure not to miss any of my future videos. Now here I'm using grey, brown and white in places, just to create this underdrawing, so it's like a tone of grey basically. It's just, like I say, it's just mapping everything out really. It's just getting everything in position, and then once everything is in position, then I can just enjoy putting all that nice subtle and rich colours in there. Now this stage is all about getting the values right, so here's the colours I'm using for that. Getting the colours and the values, the chroma. First thing you look at is some areas are fresher and brighter and some are more subtler. So the fresher and brighter areas, I'm using this Caran d'Ache white, which acts as like a light that will shine through the colour I put on the top. Now if you haven't got the Caran d'Ache white, the Faber-Castell white will do fine. I tend to use the Carbothello white now and again as well, just to blend in and to create tints. Now to create the subtleties and desaturation and shadows of that orangey colour, I'm using blue with it because it's complementary. So it creates nice subtle warm greys, and so it's just a matter of getting that sort of combination. Sometimes it's more blue you need, sometimes it's more the orangey colour you need, but then just use the white to create tints, and it's just basically just playing about until it's looking right. So just keep putting the white in, glaze over white and the blues. It's just a case of having a play and just seeing it develop, and then you'll know after a while how much of each colour you need. Now for the darker areas, I'm using the burnt sienna there, look, and the brown. Now I've just put some glassine paper down just to stop me from smudging what I've done on the underdrawing. It's a really good bit of paper to have in your kit. It's specially designed so you don't smudge anything. So I'm just leaning on that just to help, and then just refining everywhere and just basically just feeling how much some parts glow. Now if it glows, I'm adding lemon yellow to it. Now if it's desaturated, I'm adding the blue and the orangey colour together. Now on with the eyes. Now the pupil tends to be the darkest area of the portrait. Sometimes it is slightly bluer, so you have to be careful of that. But what I'm doing is using black now with the mix, black and blue together, rather than just using just neat black. And then putting burnt sienna in now with yellow ochre to create that sort of warmth around the eyes. Just slowing it down to real time now so you can have a closer look. Now you can see here I'm using brown with the black, because some areas the black is warmer and some are colder, so you use the blue in the colder areas. Now here on the iris here, I'm using the burnt sienna, and then what I'll do is desaturate it a little bit rather than being too rich, and add in that sort of blue with it, so you can sort of, you know, get the correct sort of value and the chroma of it by just adding blue and that burnt sienna together. If it's more richy, you put more burnt sienna. If it's more sort of desaturated, add more blue with it. Always like to work on the eyes at the same time, so I'm doing the same thing on the other eye as well, like I've just mentioned, but adding that little bit of lemon yellow as well, just to create that chroma in certain areas. Now the lightest part of the portrait is this area here on top of the head. Now it's really important to get that really fresh, so I've had to use that sort of Caran d'Ache white. Then I found it wasn't white enough, so then I've used the Rembrandt stick here. So it's always a good idea to get the sticks out if you're wanting that real vibrance. So what I did was go into the really light areas with this Rembrandt white, and then do the same thing, just glazing over the top. But it really helps to get that freshness when you need it. Now to really create the fresh white as well is to add a little bit of blue. It makes it really stand out, the white, you know, so if you put a bit of blue with it, it just freshens everything up and it makes it really vibrant. Just like to take this opportunity to thank all my Patreons for their wonderful support every month. Can't thank you enough, it means so much to me. If you're considering joining me on Patreon and would like the benefit of longer, slower and more in-depth videos, please check out the link in the description below for more details. Just using some black now for the nostrils there. I always like to mix something with the black, either blue, brown or a bit of red, just to give it a bit of depth. So I'm just laying the black in there just to get some sort of value correct. And then what I'll do then is go over them with white to make greys, and also picking out a grey just to put the odd little sort of dot here and there, what you tend to find on noses. It's like quite textured, a dog's nose is. Now I'm using like two different types of blues here. One's a cold blue, one's a warm blue. These are the ones here. That's the warm one, that's cold. And it's just a mixture of the two. Sometimes you have to do that. Same with the reds. You have to sort of try whether the warm one's alright or the cold and get a mixture until you feel it's right. And then I just used a bit of yellow ochre there just to add that tinge of green to it and all, like making the black greenier. And then I put a little bit of red here as well, which is creating purples. So it's loads of colours in the nose that you have to be aware of. It's just opening up to the colour, and you open your eyes wide, you see the colour. Squint your eyes to see the value. That's a little tip there for you. Now with this area I'm using black and then white, so I'm creating greys using this black. Now this Carbothello black is amazing. It's more like a natural shadow than black, and then just highlighting certain areas to get that freshness in certain places, and then just glaze over them with different colours just to create the correct sort of shade and the colour vibrancy. A little jump there because I've gone through all the procedure how to do the white fur there, so I'm just going to spend a bit of time really discussing the reflected light here, which is quite interesting to do. I've used lemon yellow, which is the reflected light from the grass and also from that tennis ball, what's creating this interesting tones here. And it's just a case of using the same pencils but just adding more of the lemon yellow just to create that sort of chroma that you're looking for. Now constantly feeling the temperature while I'm drawing and then just changing accordingly. So some areas warm, some's cool, so you have, and some's brighter and fresher, and some has got more chroma, and so there's a lot to be aware of. But it's a case of just letting go, open the heart, let go of the mind, and just really focus on the energy and the feeling and the atmosphere of the subject you're painting or drawing, and all this seems to happen. It just flows through you. Just quickly, it's like a recap really of the other ear. All it is just using the white to find that pattern, glaze over with a colour which is similar, and then go in with the brown with a bit of lemon yellow here and there where there's more vibrancy, and also burnt sienna and blue just to desaturate if you needed it. As this is really light, I'm using the Rembrandt whitey sticks again because that's really vibrant and that really is great to put underneath the colour so it shines through. I'm using the Caran d'Ache, which is also very vibrant, but then I'm planning it out using grey pencil and just sort of glaze over then just to get the overall feel of it, and then just go over subtly with the different colours, similar to what we did on the top there. It down to real time just to show you how I'm using this tool, which is the colour shaper, which is going to soften that edge so it melts into the background there. Now for the collar I'm using burnt sienna, black, blue and white. It's a similar sort of colour combination really, it's just you have to feel that texture of what you're drawing. I mean, this is leather, so it's got like a shine to it, and there's a bit of material in that leather there, in that piece there what I'm doing. So yeah, it's just a case of just keep feeling and changing it up, and just change the texture, make it smoother if it needs to be smoother. But normally the combination of pencils tend to be very similar. If you're enjoying this video, why not give it a like and share it with your friends? It would mean so much to me, as this would help the channel to grow. Now, really interesting to do this tennis ball. I really love doing it. It was quite a challenge, but it was great to do. Something different. So what I did, I just found some pencils what were in my kit a similar colour, which gave me a good base really to work on. Spent quite a bit of time getting the shape right as well, so you know, changing it up. It's easy to change things. I use the Faber-Castell rubber there just to change the angle of that curve, so it's easily enough to rub it out. But then what I did is use white, then used the blue to try and get that colour I'm looking for. Then I decided to get a stick out of Rembrandt set just to see what that does. So sometimes you have to just keep playing, trying different things until you get it to what you're looking for. Right, so I laid in some olive green just for the grass around the bottom of the picture, just to give me an idea of the tonal value then for putting the detail in this ball. Then using blue and desaturating it with the burnt sienna, creating sort of subtle greys. We're using brown and blue for the shadow in that area as well, so using that for the shadow of the green. But the burnt sienna acted as a desaturation of the green, with it being the complementary colour. And you have to keep playing about with things. And I was just doing some little swirls and that, just to create that sort of hairiness about a tennis ball. It's like a bit hairy, isn't it? A bit flirty, fibrous, you know, so just trying to create that sort of feel to it. Here's the colour I'm using for the grass. It's always a bit of a treat to do a little bit of nature within a portrait, you know, doing a bit of grass and what have you. I love doing landscapes. You haven't seen my landscape work, there's loads in my channel. This is the same principle as what I do when I do trees and everything. It's just using like a colour that is very similar, and then using burnt sienna, blue and white, just to create the subtleties in there. Putting the strands in then, and for the shadows I'm using brown and blue. You've just got to really let go and feel that part, that element of the painting. It's got to feel earthy, it's got to feel like grass, you know. All these elements in your portrait has its own sort of feel, and you have to really connect to it and basically just let go. I don't name it as grass, I just see it as light and shade and patterns. So if you can just keep simplifying things like that by just seeing it as blocks of colour, little details here and there, but these details appear if you just relax and let it flow. I always spend some time putting the details in and sensing the whole of the actual portrait. Now I reduce the image small enough so I can see the whole of it, the energy, and I'm trying to feel my way. And if there's anything in the portrait that doesn't feel right, I put my attention onto it. So you just got to keep working on certain areas that don't feel right. Keep looking in the mirror. Take your portrait into another room, have a look at it in different light. As I know some people, they actually turn it upside down, have a look at it that way. But there's all these little tricks. Take a photograph with your phone just to see what it looks like. You'll get a gut feeling when you know it's finished, because you can over-render it, so you've got to be careful of that as well. So just listen to inside yourself. And just to mention that this portrait will be on my Patreon at some point, and it'll be the whole footage slowed down so you can see every mark I make and every pencil I use. So be sure to check that out when it's available. Thank you so much for watching the video right till the end. Here's the actual portrait at the correct angle rather than being in perspective on the easel. Now if you're interested in seeing any more of my work, please check out this video here. Take care, bye for now.